Welcome to the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by the funny Womacks and friends. If you're looking to get more out of your Shenandoah Valley experience, then this is the podcast for you. You'll meet interesting people, musicians, and comedians that perform here and find out more about what you can do and see. Whether you live here or plan to visit, listen to explore what makes our unique slice of heaven. Now here's your host, Davis Womack.
Hello, Laughers. I'm so excited to be here today with our special guest. I am Davis Womack.
And I'm Chris Womack.
And we are the Funny Womacks. Happy New Year to you. We're excited, to kick off this health and fitness podcast series for you this month. And we are going to kick it off with a resident expert in health and fitness within my own home, the one and only Chris Womack here, who has been teaching and doing exercise research for the last 31 years. He is a James Madison University professor, and he does that by day. He is a comedian by night with me.
That's right.
And he's done that for almost 4 years now.
3.5, yeah.
3.5. That's close.
Yeah.
Yes.
We round up.
We did. And he has an additional 25 years experience being married to me.
Yeah, that's the best one of all those things.
Yes. Welcome to the show, Chris. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited he's here too. He's got a wealth of information to share. He has an extraordinary vita, as they call it. Normal people call that a resume. And he has teaching experience first at Longwood College when he first began, and then at Michigan State University, and now here at James Madison University for the last 19 years. In fact, we are sitting in his research lab.
That's right.
That he shares with the other faculty here at JMU, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And then where did we meet?
Oh, yeah. So we met between Longwood College and Michigan State. I was doing my postdoctoral research fellowship at University of Maryland Medical Center, where you were working. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't keep our eyes off each other.
I was actually doing the postmenopausal obese women's weight loss and walking study because that's what I did before comedy, and for quite a while is I had got my undergraduate and graduate degree in exercise science from West Virginia University, and where I met you was my first job out of graduate school. Mm-hmm. But we weren't on the same exercise science projects. Well, you were working on a different one. What was that?
Right. I was working with a very large study on people with peripheral arterial disease. Mm-hmm. So that's when you get like narrowed artery, kind of like what leads to a heart attack, as most people know, is your arteries narrow, and one fine day your heart doesn't get enough blood flow and you have a heart attack. So that can also happen in your leg circulation. Mm-hmm. And that's called peripheral arterial disease. So we were doing a lot of work on how exercise can possibly help those people. Yeah. Yeah,
that's where we met. And we were friends first.
That's right.
Yes, because believe it or not, there was another Mrs. Womack before me.
Yep, had to start a marriage.
I did too.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
Yep. You've
done this now 31 years, and you're going to be sharing in a little bit your top 5 tips for us going into 2025. Yeah. I'm excited about that. But I want to know a little bit more about what sparked your interest into exercise science. Did you always know that you wanted to be a kinesiology professor?
My recollection is that it first entered my mind as a possibility, funny enough, right here in this room where we're sitting.
Really?
Yeah, because I was an undergrad in this program back in the 80s, and my exercise physiology class was actually in this room. So it was less a lab and more an instructional space back there, even though we did use it as a lab for some things. But so I took XPhys in this room, and I just loved the class. And the professor, Dr. Jean Dalton, shout out, hopefully she's hearing this, was very good teacher, and really enjoyed learning about it, and it kind of got on my radar as like, oh, this. And then I went to my first American College of Sports Medicine conference in 1989, I believe it was. And, I just was clueless about what these guys were talking about when they were presenting their research, but something in me was like, wow, I want to know more so I can understand this. The little I can understand it sounds so cool.
Yeah.
So I want to learn more, and a lot of other stuff happened, but those are some of the more formative moments that got me on this path. So yeah.
Yeah, and Dr. Judith Floor, who's now retired, I believe was another
she was
big influence for you.
Consequential. Yeah. That was more after I realized I wanted to do it. And then Judy, who was my advisor here, and she's still a faculty emeritus in our program. But I was not a good student at first, and she looked past that and encouraged me and helped me figure out what I needed to do to get to this point. So wouldn't be here without her.
Yeah, actually, that's true. And then you had a lull between, and I say teaching lull between the Longwood and Michigan State University, specifically because you decided to do a postdoctoral fellowship.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is where we met. That's
right,
what you were working on.
Yep.
Most people do postdoctorate fellowships right after they complete their PhD.
That's right. I went a little bit in reverse, yeah.
So why did you go rogue? What was happening?
Well, I was at Longwood College, now Longwood University, and I could just tell that if I wanted to ever, this is not an insult at Longwood, but just I could tell that if I ever wanted to be at a larger university, then that, like a JMU, like this would have been my ideal place back then. And it turns out I was right, but I didn't know that. That it was going to be challenging because I had a very teaching heavy schedule there, and I wasn't able to do a lot of research. And so I wanted options, So I realized, wow, it'd probably help me have all the options I want if I did that postdoctoral fellowship. And the fact that at that moment in my life, I kind of needed to be generally speaking, in the Mid-Atlantic region, made me apply for that postdoctoral fellowship position. And it worked because I got that Michigan State job later, and I would not have gotten that without a postdoctoral research fellowship. Those kinds of places those big state universities usually only hire faculty with that in our field. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, what was your favorite part of working at the GREC? We called it the GREC. It's a geriatric research. Oh, my goodness.
What's it short Exercise for? Clinical Center?
I think that's it.
Yeah, clinical. I knew the two C's, I believe, are Clinical Center. Yeah.
Which is a part of University of Maryland.
Yep.
And we were housed in the VA Medical Center downtown.
Yep.
Yeah.
What was my favorite part of that?
Yeah.
The last year I was there 3 years, and the last year, I'm sure you'll remember this, but I started working with a physician there by the name of Dr. Richard Macco. And he taught me all about blood clotting responses to exercise. He taught me all about that stuff. He is a neurologist. He is probably still the most brilliant person I ever met or worked with. And yet he was a very, humble, down-to-earth guy. And he just taught me so much. And I don't know if you remember this, but I had a goal. I had breakfast with him once a week while he was mentoring me.
I do remember that, yeah.
My goal was to make it through breakfast talking about the research in that area and understand what he was saying for the entire breakfast. And I did it right before we left. Remember, I went up and I said, I did it. I did it. I must know what I'm talking about now. But he really spurred my interest in that area. And the first part of my research career, especially at Michigan State, when I was getting really established, was in that area. And it was really good. And I've trained doctoral students who've gone on and done work in that area too. And so it's been really cool. But he just really spurred my interest at a time when I was starting to get very bored with the research world. And then he showed me that here's this entirely new field, and he was also just so passionate and intelligent, and I just kind of fired me up being around somebody like that. So yeah.
Okay, this is where you're going to help the laughers out with their wide range of knowledge in exercise science.
Oh, wow.
So the takeaways in terms of what you've learned about blood clotting and its either positive or negative impact on our health and fitness. What do you think the lay person should know, and what do you think an athlete should know?
Well, the main thing is the overall thing. The reason why blood clotting and blood clotting responses and adaptations to exercise are important is because when we have a heart attack or stroke, it's usually, as I said before, it's usually because our arteries get more and more narrow. They supply blood to our heart, those arteries supply blood to our brain, and we can have sort of a plaque form in our artery wall, and that gets bigger and bigger, and eventually that artery is blocked off, and we have a heart attack or a stroke. Mm-hmm. The thing that usually blocks that artery off, so usually that plaque grows and grows and grows and grows, and it might grow as much as like blocking off like 80 or 90% of your artery, but blood's still getting through there. The thing that takes it from 80 to 90% to 100% is usually a blood clot, because that plaque itself can get injured or damaged, and just like any other tissue in our body, when it gets injured or damaged, a blood clot forms. All right. So regular exercise, so that makes it kind of like a risk factor for heart disease, just like blood pressure is a risk factor for heart disease. So, and as it turns out, it looks like the leaner we are and the more aerobically fit we are, we'll tend to not clot as quick. And that is a good thing in this context. We don't want to form a large blood clot really quickly, or we'll quickly block off that artery. But whereas if we're not as predisposed to do that, we can, kind of stave that heart attack or stroke off a little bit. Okay.
And that's what you would want a layperson may not know as much about that, and the athlete, because they're going to maybe not have as much risk factors.
Yeah,
right?
Honestly, an athlete probably doesn't need, there's no performance aspect to it or anything like that. So
that's
they're
what I
probably
thought.
not all.
Can you do
it's more of an overall health thing for people who are middle-aged and older.
Okay. Now, for all of us, are we able to get rid of that plaque at all? So can we improve our condition?
Plaques can get smaller. So they can get smaller if you have a particular risk factor and it goes away. So, for example, if you're a cigarette smoker and you stop smoking, the plaque can shrink a little bit. If you improve your HDL levels, that's what's commonly referred to as the good cholesterol. I don't like that term at all, but we'll go with it just based on the fact that that's what people know it as. Okay. If you can increase that, that can shrink plaques. It literally sucks cholesterol and fat out of those plaques.
Oh,
it's really amazing.
Right.
Yeah. And then just honestly, overall health and wellness can shrink those plaques. So there was a study where they showed, long time ago, they showed the regression of those plaques with people who went on this very intensive diet, exercise, and meditation program.
Oh, neat.
So
that makes
they
sense.
made a holistic program for them, and they noticed regression of the size of the plaque. So yeah, you can.
Okay, now I know. See, I couldn't leave it alone either, Laughers. He said he was not a fan of the term HDL at all. And I don't think...
No, I'm not a fan of the term good or bad cholesterol. I don't like those terms.
Thank you for the correction, Prof.
I'm very precise.
But can you share why that you're not a fan of the term good cholesterol?
Yeah, actually gladly, because I just want people to think about this a little bit more. So LDL cholesterol is typically called the bad cholesterol, and HDL cholesterol is typically called the good cholesterol. And I understand why. Because the LDL cholesterol is typically the stuff that gets deposited in your artery wall. And the HDL cholesterol, as I said, is something that can kind of counteract that. However, LDL cholesterol is not some sort of mistake. It's like God didn't make a mistake by giving us that or anything. LDL cholesterol is actually this amazing delivery system for cholesterol and fat in our bodies. And actually, LDL cholesterol, it forms the building blocks of our cell membranes. It forms the building blocks of our sex hormones, like estrogen and testosterone and the like. And it's really important for overall health. So we shouldn't look at LDL cholesterol like the less you have, the better. We should look at it like, yes, this is the stuff that can get deposited in our artery walls. And if it gets insanely high, yes, we should pay attention to that. But it serves a very good purpose. So we shouldn't do, and so, I mean, HDL is actually really good. But I guess I'm more upset about calling LDL bad. Yeah.
Because it has a positive purpose.
More than
we've talked about, really.
Yeah, it tends to just get painted with its one little potential problem.
Yes. I see that. Yeah, I actually, Laffers said, don't tell me what your top 5 tips are, because I just want to see what it is and be a surprise when we record. So I'm excited to ask this question. We're going to be asking this question to each of the experts throughout the series. So it'll also be fascinating over the series to see how everyone's top 5 matches up against each other. So you're the first one, Dr. Womack.
All right.
What is your top 5? Drum roll, please.
Okay. Number 1 is people are probably not eating enough protein.
Yes. And he talks to me about that too, Laffers. You are not alone. So I am working on it.
Yeah. The recommended daily allowance for protein is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So, however, I could make a really good argument, and I often have, that should be doubled. I would strenuously suggest to people that they double that.
Okay.
And that's where it can be challenging. So,
yes.
If you look at the research, actually, probably the best paper on this was published around 2015 or 2016, if memory serves. It's called the ProteAge paper.
Okay.
And this was a bunch of experts in the field of nutrition and exercise and nutrition. And they came together to sort of make a position paper on recommended protein, especially for older adults.
Okay.
And they came up with some kind of new guidelines themselves, and based on this. And they went through their rationale as to why they were recommending what they were recommending. Bottom line, they recommend 1.5 grams per kilogram body weight.
That's certainly more than the 0.8.
There's two things. Regardless of your age, increasing your protein intake to that extent will have a very positive impact on what we call your fat-free mass. And your fat-free mass is primarily your muscles and your bones. So it can have a positive effect on that in anybody. And that's been shown conclusively in the research. And then secondly, as we age, so more for middle-aged and older individuals, they pointed out quite nicely in that paper that our protein uptake from our diet gets worse. So it's harder to extract the protein we eat than it was from the food we eat than it was when we were younger, and making it even more important to up your protein intake. So that would mean for a let's take a 200-pound person. That would mean, a protein intake of, we're talking about 130, 140 grams. That's a lot of protein. And I would recommend to people that they track their calories for at least a short period of time, a week or so, and see how much protein intake they're going to get in. They're getting in. I think they'd be surprised. And the thing with protein is it not only has those tissue building effects that I talked about. That's going to be a positive because our resting metabolic rate, the amount of calories it takes to keep ourselves awake and alive, number one variable it's tied to is our fat-free mass, our muscle mass, and our bone mass. So if we can maintain that over the years more, then how people always say, oh, my metabolism's gone down because I've gotten older. And that's actually a true statement. It does. But you can offset that by maintaining your muscle mass. Which
doing some strength training.
Yes, and I'll get to that. So you probably need more protein than you think you do. And also, by the way, think about this from a weight maintenance standpoint. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient.
Very true. Yes.
So out of protein, carbohydrate, and fat, protein, when you eat it, keeps you satisfied longer. You can go longer between eating.
Agreed.
And there you go.
You'll feel it.
You won't be as hungry. And another guy, I'm borrowing this from a guy in a colleague teaches at one of the Florida schools. I can't remember, but his name is Jose Antonio, and he's done some great protein research. So I'm glad I remembered his name to give him a shout out because he's done some great stuff.
Yeah.
He put it like this. He said, think about if you ate a really good steak and you were full from that.
Oh, I'm thinking about it right now.
Oh yeah. Well, that sounds great to all of us, myself included. That's one of my favorite meals, as you know. But after you're full, even if you like steak, it would be very hard to say, oh, come on. How about a little more? When you're done, you're done.
Oh, I'm full. I can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were eating some chocolate cake and someone said, oh, come on, how about one slice more? It's like, yeah, I guess I can fit that in.
I seem to say yes to that.
Protein is incredibly satiating.
Yeah.
And you tend to have a little bit more leeway with over-consuming protein, too. Very interesting because that same scholar I told you about, Jose Antonio, he found that he took these young weightlifters, they were just training enthusiasts on his campus, and he overfed protein, like gave them ridiculous amounts of protein to consume, to add to their diet. And these guys were consuming, I think it was an extra up to 800 calories worth of protein. That was in the highest range, but they should have been gaining a lot of weight.
And they didn't.
Calorically speaking, and they didn't gain an ounce of fat. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
So, yeah. And
I doubt that would be happening with the chocolate cake.
Yeah, exactly. You overfeed chocolate cake, you're going to have a different outcome.
I might or might not know something about that.
Yeah. And then I just want to add in there that protein does not cause kidney damage, people. It just doesn't. That's kind of a myth. So that's point number one. Yep.
Up the protein.
Oh, the second one is also a nutritional piece of advice. Okay. And that the less the food is processed, the better.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And this goes back to, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this recommendation before, but it doesn't make it less true. Eat on the outside of the grocery, the outside
of the
aisles of the grocery store rather than the middle aisles of the grocery store. And there's a lot of debate about this, and people are like, well, this chemical that they added, there's no evidence that it does anything bad. Or another argument I hear is, well, everything is sort of processed. What do you mean by processed? And here's the deal. My argument is just a simple one. Most of the stuff in the middle aisles that has been processed, your Cheez-Its, your Doritos, your whatever. I mean, I love these foods, by the way. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not...
Pringles.
Absolutely. Oh, we can kill some Pringles.
Wait, that's why I can't have it in the house.
The food industry knows what it's doing. And part of the additives in these things are specifically put in there to make us want more of them. to make us hungrier. There's a former competitive bodybuilder and powerlifter named Stan Efferding, and he coaches and trains regular people, athletes, people and he does a lot of nutritional consulting. And in some of his football players that they need to add weight, some of the linemen, what he'll do is if they can't get in enough calories, he has them eat one Dorito.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about this.
One Dorito.
And that
because he knows that will flip on that hunger switch. And they'll be good to go.
And now they're eating another steak.
So that just shows you so that's my argument about minimizing the processed foods. I'm not going to get into toxins or any sort of mumbo jumbo. It's just simply a lot of the stuff that has been added to the boxed foods or bagged foods that have a long shelf life are there to specifically make us enjoy them.
And eat more.
Hit our pleasure centers in the brain.
Yeah.
Eat more. So you'll find you're a lot more satisfied and satiated if you eat fewer processed foods. So outside
more
aisles
whole
of the grocery
foods.
store.
Yeah, more whole
So
foods.
that's my second one.
Okay, what's number 3?
Number 3 is strength training is probably more important from a health perspective than you think it is. I think we're starting to get this word out now. And I'm so gratified to see a lot of fitness professionals and health influencers tout the benefits of strength training. But I think we still have some work to do to get this word out. And in particular, I think some of us Gen Xers and boomers were always taught coming up that, well, the exercise for your health, that's your jogging, that's your aerobic exercise, that's your cardio.
That was kind of pounded into us.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively
Exactly.
speaking.
And you know that from
right.
when you trained in exercise science the same time I did. So, and that, sure, strength training's fine, and especially if for aesthetic looks purposes, but, it's okay for your health, but it's not. And now we know, oh my gosh.
So important.
Oh, and I'll just give a few examples. There was a study done about 8 years ago, and they found a large epidemiological study, and they found that having low grip strength was worse for your all-cause mortality than having high blood pressure.
Oh, we talked about that over
that.
coffee one day. You were telling me about that. Yeah.
Think about how powerful that is. That means health professionals should be as, if not more, alarmed that their patients have poor strength than if they have high blood pressure. Right? Think about that.
Yep.
And we measure blood pressure a lot, which we should.
But they
we're not
could do it
measuring
easy with a grip test. It's
grip
not
strength,
that hard.
as you know, takes 30 seconds, right?
Very quick.
So that's one example. Another similar study, a large epidemiological study done in Swiss adolescents a while back. And they did a follow-up on these guys 30 years later, 30 to 40 years later. So they're in their 40s and 50s when they retested them. And they looked at outcomes like depression and suicide, which is kind of morbid, but having higher strength and muscular fitness lowered
well, we
rates of
definitely
both of that.
need to get that word out,
that wild?
especially today with our young people.
We also know now
if you
that
know young people or raising young people, take note on that.
Yeah, we also know now that in dementia patients, Alzheimer's patients, their brain volume, which goes down in those conditions, actually is higher in the patients with better muscular fitness.
That makes sense.
So muscle mass is brain mass in people like that, which is so wild. So just a lot of amazing links between strength. I always sum up this way to my students. Aerobic fitness is probably the best exercise-related predictor of how long you're going to live. Muscular fitness is probably the best exercise-related indicator of your quality of life.
I totally agree with that.
How about we put both together?
That would be
make some
really
magic?
Make some magic. In one of my last, or it was my last. Yes, it was, I believe. My last job as an exercise physiologist, I was a wellness center manager
That's right.
Virginia Retirement Minute.
Yeah.
I said that right.
Yeah.
Community. And in that wellness center, it was interesting to me to consistently see people the same age and the difference in how they carried themselves in their daily lives based on who was coming to the wellness center and working out regularly and who wasn't. Sometimes it was surprising to see two people the same age, but the one not working out and using the wellness center looking much older than the people that were using the wellness center.
Absolutely right.
That was really also motivating.
Yeah.
Even though I do like a lot of chocolate cakes.
That's right. Well, we all do. So
again,
no
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
We're getting it back together, laughers. Okay.
My fourth tip,
one.
and this is just to help people structure their training, to know what they need and to do. And this is an often misunderstood recommendation I'm about to make, but strength training and aerobic training, they don't, generally speaking, this is a general statement I'm making, this isn't true of everybody, but for most people, they do not have spillover effects onto each other. So what I mean by that is strength training in general will not benefit your heart, give you a stronger heart and give you those kind of aerobic adaptations and benefits.
Right.
And aerobic training will not improve your muscular fitness.
That's right. You're using the same body, but they're two different systems.
Yeah, and where I think people get confused is, especially nowadays where so many of us have access to a heart rate monitor just right on our watch, they'll observe that, when I'm in the weight room and I do a lot of reps and then I take very short breaks between my sets, my heart rate's elevated, so I must be getting a cardio workout too. And I understand that misinterpretation, but that's not true. I mean, yes, you are seeing an elevated heart rate, but what is not happening with that, like it is with running or cycling or rowing or swimming, what's not happening is that your oxygen uptake is not going up proportionally. So when we don't know this, but when we're running on a treadmill, we're looking at our heart rate as a marker of our intensity because it goes up proportionally to how our oxygen uptake goes up. So our oxygen uptake going up, that's what makes us in better aerobic shape.
Right.
So because we can't measure oxygen uptake in most situations, we just look at our heart rate and go, okay, well, if that's up this far, then my oxygen uptake must be up that far as well. And that's a good assumption. But heart rate increasing during strength training is increasing for different reasons. It's almost like the reason it increases when you're suddenly surprised or or scared or something like that. It's a very heavy sympathetic nervous system response. And that's why your heart rate's going up. But studies have even shown your heart does not really adapt just because your heart rate's higher. So that increased heart rate you see in the weight room, that isn't sufficient. If you want to improve your aerobic fitness, you're going to have to spend some time on that. Conversely, moving your muscles when you're out there for a 1 hour run or walk or bike ride, yes, you're using your muscles, but you're not really improving your muscular fitness all that much. There was a study done where they looked at long time aerobic exercisers who were now old or older.
Longitudinal study.
Actually more of a cross-sectional one, but it's all right. But they just looked at them like right there, like while they're in there, I believe they're in their 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
And these people had been working out aerobically like for decades. Right?
Okay.
And they were no stronger. They obviously had better aerobic fitness than their sedentary counterparts, but their muscular fitness, their muscular strength, that was no different than people who had never exercised at all. So showing quite nicely that, yeah, you're going to need to attend to your muscular fitness even though you're working your muscles when you're doing aerobic exercise. So you need both if you want to optimize your fitness.
That's your fourth tip.
Yeah.
You need to spend.
You need both if you want to optimize.
Spend time in both areas to optimize your health.
Yeah, and the balance can depend on your goals.
Yeah.
So if you really want to get after your strength training and you don't want to minimize your improvements there with a lot of high volume running or something, fine. You can walk 4 days a week, something lower intensity. And conversely, if you're an enthusiastic runner, you're trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, you don't need your weight training interfering with your adaptations for your running. So maybe it's just some body weight exercises and calisthenics a couple of times a week. Something like that. So at least some minimal attention paid goes a long way.
We're going to see too, Laughers, because he's put together a weight training routine for me.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
So a year from now, I'm going to kick off my health and fitness journey this month. So you can join me this month, and we can, in December of 2025, we can do a post evaluation and see how it went.
Yeah.
That should be interesting.
That will be. Yeah. Maybe we can even test you here in the lab.
Oh, the before and after. Okay. What's number 5?
The last one is recovery as a part of training.
Okay.
So if you highly stress your body every single day, you are going to build up that accumulated fatigue, and it's going to start being a lot of diminishing returns. So built into your training should be some days where you're like, okay, this is a day where I know my body is recovering.
Okay.
Rather than being torn down, it's being built up.
Okay.
I know that's happening today.
Okay.
Right? Now, that can look different for different people. You get a very highly trained runner, for example, that person might be running 70 miles a week. And so a day when they're jogging 6 miles might be recovery to them. Whereas other people, it's like, well, you want to be active every day, but, a recovery day for somebody who is just doing a pretty normal, type of thing, they should be active, get their steps in, that kind of thing.
So active recovery.
Yeah, exactly. Active recovery helps, but it should be something so easy that your body is in a build back mode. Because our adaptations are from breaking down, building back, breaking down, building back. So if you just break down and never build back, you're not building anything. Think of it that way. So there you go.
Well, I don't think enough people talk about the active recovery.
I don't think they do either.
Because it's really more all or nothing.
Yeah.
We're going to do all aerobic fitness. Here's your aerobic fitness program. We're going to do all strength training. Here's your all strength training program. And then there are some programs out there that will put in recovery, or at least give the recovery workout options.
Yes.
But overall, as a health and fitness industry, I don't think we talk about that nearly enough.
That's right. So if you I'm not talking about lying on the couch all day and saying, "Oh, I can't possibly help you move because I'm recovering today." Don't be that person. That's not even helpful. But just do life. Be an active person the days you're recovering, but don't. More is not necessarily always better.
Right, and I think depending on your goals, you can pick active recovery activities that excite you a little bit more. So
absolutely.
Maybe you're a distance runner, so taking the dogs for an extra long walk might be perfect. Yeah. Kind of recovery activity for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even some days in the summer, recovery days are like when I go, no one would think of this as a recovery activity. I like to go to the driving range.
Oh yeah,
it's
that's fun.
It's a relaxing activity to me.
Yeah, me too.
I'm out in the sun. I'm standing up. I'm moving my body.
Yeah,
but it's certainly not taxing.
No, well, so you can be creative with that. I think
that's right.
Yeah, I like that. I want to ask you about supplements. I know, controversial, right? What do you think about supplements in general? And then what would you, if anything, recommend for your average person? Or do you want to stay away from that?
No,
question?
I'd be happy to. I think I can summarize things.
Okay.
There are some supplements that work, I mean, beyond what you could ever believe. Now, those supplements are either illegal to obtain outside of medical, outside of a prescription, and or they are banned from sports. So I'm talking about anabolic steroids and blood doping and that kind of thing. So they work like a charm. They have side effects. Those side effects are concerning enough that
that's
you
why
need a
they're
prescription
illegal.
for them.
Okay, yeah.
And these sport governing bodies have also said, yeah, we're not interested in our athletes getting a competitive advantage from these things. So, so I'm not going to touch those because those are obviously risk is not worth the benefit, or at least it probably shouldn't be. I don't want to tell people how to live their lives. And if
Right.
you're a recreational athlete and for some reason taking anabolic steroids, I guess do you. But it's not a free lunch. Anyhow, so those are amazing. Everything else ranges from that's not bad to don't waste your money, with a lot in the don't waste your money camp. So I'll give you a couple, but they're pretty bland. And although, thank you for this question because it gives me an opportunity to set the record straight on something that actually does work. One of the things that is available over the counter with little to no side effects that does work is creatine. And creatine helps you specifically. It basically, if you're a weight trainer, it helps you squeeze a few more repetitions out per set. Think of it that way. So you're able to train a little bit harder, and it has those benefits. And it does not help aerobic exercise performance or distance performance or anything like that, but it does help short duration performance. In most people, there are some non-responders to it. Creatine always gets accused of causing cramps and, things like that. It really doesn't. I mean, this has been the most studied supplement besides caffeine around, and it really doesn't cause. The worst it can cause in some people is bloating. There you go, bloating.
Yeah, I don't want
Ta-da.
that.
Well, a lot of people don't, but
Okay.
it does. You'll retain more water
Okay.
with it, and that's is what it is. That's worth it to you or not. But none of these things people worry about. Like I've just heard people come to me and ask me about it like it's an anabolic steroid. It's really amazing. The benefit that you get out of the minimal side effects is pretty amazing to me. And also we're starting to see now some evidence that it helps cognitive function in older individuals.
Oh,
So
that'll be interesting to watch the research on that.
Actually, an older
as we
individual,
go.
since it helps muscular fitness, which goes down in older individuals, and it potentially helps brain health in those same individuals, there's an argument to be made. Just take that. My gosh, I mean, that's why not, right? It's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it. So that's one.
I would say so, yeah.
I would say back to my point about not getting enough protein, if that's a challenge to get in the kind of protein intake I was suggesting, 1.5 grams per kilogram body weight every day, then obviously a protein, like a whey protein supplement, could be beneficial in those people. So that works. And then caffeine works. Caffeine, this is kind of a funny supplement in terms of how it's used. Caffeine helps the most in endurance performance.
Really?
Yeah, that's the biggest effect it has. It has very small effect size.
I don't know much about this.
And has very small effect size and shorter duration. But what I tend to see anecdotally is strength and power athletes consuming the crap out of caffeine, which is this teeny tiny effect if there is one at all.
Yeah. Whereas
Endurance athletes, except for cyclists pound a lot of caffeine, but they don't attend to that as much, even though it helps them more. It's a very strange phenomenon, but it helps with all types of performance, but it really has the biggest what we call effect size with the endurance performance. So,
wow.
Yeah, so those are the three that I think pretty much work. Now, we're entering a very interesting time with a lot of these peptides.
Okay.
Like the GLP-1 inhibitors,
So let's get everybody on the same page with that. What's the GLP-1?
These are peptides, and they do a lot of things, but they mainly have an effect on your appetite, and you really don't eat very much. And a lot of people are losing weight on these, like Ozempic, and they are very effective at people dropping weight. The problem is what they're seeing is a lot of loss of muscle and bone when people go on these things because they're eating less. And what I was saying before, you need enough protein in your diet to attend to those lean tissues. And, if you're just relying on taking something to positively influence your body composition, you're probably not changing your diet in a positive. You're not doing the work yourself. A lot of times, I don't mean to paint with too broad of a brush, but those people who are on those should really be upping their protein intake, even taking a protein supplement if necessary.
Sure, their strength training.
And there you go. Took the words out of my mouth. So, but that's not the only thing that peptides can do. And so we're going to be entering a place where, some supplements are going to start working in interesting ways.
Gosh.
So, yeah.
That's coming down the pipe.
It's pretty much here. It's right outside the door.
So what kinds of strange new things will we be seeing, do you think?
I can't even... Yeah, this is beyond my...
Can't fathom a little bit?
Yeah, this is beyond my knowledge. I'm like everybody else with that stuff because I don't work in that area. So I find out about things as they come out. So I'm going to be right there with everybody else going like, whoa, one of them does this,
Okay.
So,
but you just see it. You can see it
Oh, yeah, and
coming.
you hear a lot of chatter. So, yeah.
That's really crazy.
Yeah.
The world we live in is insane. We have lots of devices available to us now that we can wear.
Yeah.
What do you think about the wearable devices that can track our fitness?
I really like them. I think that, like everything, it's not, the device will never take a person that's unmotivated to exercise and doesn't care and isn't caring for their physical self. I doubt it's ever going to take that person and transform them. But it's a nice tool to have. Along the way.
Like a Fitbit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apple
I
has
got one and I like having it, and it's really cool to see. I can track my, like we said, when I'm working out aerobically, I can track my intensity using the heart rate. I can even see where my heart rate's at just during the day at rest. Like, whoa, that's elevated. Why would I be elevated right now? They track our sleep and give us data on that, and that's such an important component of fitness, of being fit.
Is.
It can, what I said, just have an active day. A lot of times that's encouraging people like, hey, hit some, by the way, there's nothing magical about 10,000 steps, but that's a decent activity level.
A good daily goal.
No one ever did a study where they said, 10,000 steps, that's when the needle moves. 7,000 steps is a pretty good day, honestly. But 10,000, that's a neat thing to hit. And I look for it myself. Yeah. I've got my watch set to have a party when I hit that in a day. And it's just, like I was saying before, having an active day.
Yeah.
That tells me that's a piece of feedback that helps me with that. So yeah, I'm a fan of those things. Especially they're getting good.
They are really getting good.
A lot of the earlier ones were like, I don't know about that.
It definitely has improved for sure. And then HIIT workouts are a big thing, as I feel like that's one of the most recent revolutions in fitness since I started years ago.
Yeah.
And I would like for you to share, as the expert, somebody may actually have never heard of what a HIIT workout is.
Sure.
So what is that?
Well, by definition, it can mean a lot of things.
It can.
To a lot of people, it means an interval workout where you work really hard for seconds, if not minutes. and then you take a rest period, and then you go back to a block of time where you're working really hard, rinse, repeat per however long you go. And that's a way of getting in a high volume of high intensity work, physical work. It can also be something like a 20-minute, like we call a threshold or tempo workout, where you're noticeably breathing heavy, and you can do more time than that, but you're happy that 20 minutes is over at the same time.
I've been through these
That
workouts.
is considered a high intensity workout by definition. So basically anything above what we would consider to be what we call the lactate threshold, all right, where you can start seeing lactic acid accumulation in your bloodstream. No need to measure that, but the breathing cue I gave you, when you're exercising above your lactate threshold, your breathing's a bit labored. You might not want to talk to your neighbor, as much.
Yeah.
So anything like that would be considered high intensity training. And yes, it is effective. It improves just about anything you can think of more than just moderate training. But people get very all or none with their exercise, and they take this, well, is this better than this, to mean that I should always do this and never that. And I tell my students, you can get the positive effects of high intensity training doing it like 2 times a week. And then on days when you're recovering, like I said, that's when you can do the low to moderate intensity training. So you can have both in your life. You can have the low to moderate intensity training where perhaps it's a bit better for your mental, emotional wellness. They've shown that you reach a bit of a meditative kind of brainwave state when you're walking, for example.
Which is
so you've got that kind of benefit. You're burning some calories. You're getting outside. You might be up in your vitamin D naturally, kind of thing. All those positive benefits. And then you focus 2 days a week, like, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna blast this out a little bit more. And you get the positive effects of everything. So this versus this can be informative, but a lot of times I think it implies one type of training wins, air quotes, and then therefore we shouldn't do the other type, which is kind of short-sighted.
Yeah, I think a big part of being consistent with exercise is finding the activities that you really enjoy.
Yeah, it needs to be sustainable.
Because if you really enjoy them, then you will keep doing them.
That's right.
So there can be the expert out there. It's like, hey, this is my program. Do this and you'll get results. And that's true. And lots of times you do what they recommend, you're going to get results, especially if you do it how they showed you to do it. But that, you may hate it.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
You could stop in the middle, and that's okay too. It's okay to stop and then try something else.
Yeah.
You keep trying until you find some activity you like.
That's right.
Some people get into martial arts, and that's how they
absolutely
do their fitness, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the ultra runner or the group fitness person or the yoga person or the But
geez, good diet
goes
and solid, consistent
activity more, which is
people would be shocked.
Getting to become a priority.
I think we would see a transformed country in terms of health if just everybody had, high protein, low processed foods, was active every day.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what that would do? That would be amazing.
Yeah. That could be as simple of a question to ask yourself.
Yeah. What can I do to get a little bit better?
And then at the end of the day, did I do that?
Yeah.
And if you didn't, you don't want to beat yourself up about that. You just get up the next day and do the same thing again.
Yeah. And that doesn't have to be an all or nothing either. I've learned that to make my workout sustainable, some days I have to negotiate with myself. It's like, oh man, no way. I don't have the time or energy to do that workout. And so what I used to do is be all or nothing. Like, well, if I can't do it, then I can't do it. And I don't do anything. Yeah. And instead, I've learned to negotiate with myself. It's like, okay, I understand that. Let's meet ourselves where we're at, so to speak. And, what can we do? What would you be willing to do? Would you be willing to do, this? We just cut your exercises in half. How's that sound? Or we'll do this one multi-joint exercise that covers a lot of muscle groups. How about we just knock out 4 sets of that. How would you feel about that? Oh, okay, I can do that. It's almost like a conversation you're having with yourself, but then you turned around and you've done something, and I've done that before, and then I've kind of gotten into it and gone like,
Yeah.
I think I feel good enough to do this whole stupid thing. So
Yeah, and give yourself grace for busy moms out there. I think about the times in our married life together where I've been the most in shape, or even just our time knowing each other. That first time was when we were dating, and I was a single mom.
Yeah.
And getting to work out at a specified time,
Yeah.
daily or weekly was, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
So
You were trying to train for a marathon. You did
and
successfully.
I did. So there would be some, your kid gets sick, and what you planned to work out for that day just isn't going to work out. So I would know, if I had just a little window and I thought I was going to be able to do 30, 45 minutes, but I just had 10 or 15. I I got 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll do 10 or 15 minutes.
More than I would have done.
Yep. And over time that added up, and I just chose not to beat myself up for it, because I was doing as best as a single mom could.
Yeah.
And I did a great marathon for me,
You
for
did.
my
You very
own
much
personal
did.
record.
Especially for a first marathon, that was very good.
Right? I mean, I wasn't going to win it,
I-
but I did good for me.
I think this non-shaming yourself with diet too.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, have a general framework of, I want to hit my protein intake.
Yeah.
I want to try to keep my calories to a level that works for whatever I'm doing. But for example, right now it's the holiday season. How many parties have we been to lately with some awesome cookies?
Yeah.
I've had some cookies.
I've had
You know what I mean? It's like
some cookies too.
I think, it's fine. It's not the end of the world that I had some cookies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's okay. You look at it in the broad sense. Maybe I had 2, and normally I'd have 5, but I enjoyed them. And I learned ways of enjoying them without shoving a bunch of them in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's all a growth thing.
Yeah. Progress over perfection.
Yeah, it is a mental and emotional as well as a physical journey.
It really is. And if you're like me, you can have those periods where you're super fit, and then other periods not so much.
Oh, yeah.
And everything in between.
I've had that, yeah.
So you can reset, which is what I'm in the process of doing right now. I'm in that resetting to have a great 2025. Again, we're doing this together, laughers.
That's right. I've weighed 200 pounds multiple times in my life, which is the upper end of what I usually weigh, laughers. But just to use an example, I've weighed 200 pounds for really cool reasons, and I've weighed 200 pounds for not so good reasons.
I know, and you're an even slim person that can show you just how important having lean body muscle mass is, no matter how you're built.
I almost wish I had a picture. Wouldn't that be great to have a picture of me at 200 pounds for extra fat versus, putting on some lean weight?
I know. One of my favorite pictures is of when he was at JMU lifting a lot. He said, "Oh boy."
Yeah.
And he's like, and moving on. But seriously, I do want to ask you a couple more questions before we wrap up here. And one of them is, what is your evolution of your personal workouts over time? And then what do you recommend to people? I know you kind of alluded to that, but what would you recommend for people that are new to fitness, and then people that have some time on the clock, so to speak?
Okay.
So for your personal workout evolution.
Working out and playing sports was always a part of my life. So I've always been active. In college, I got very into strength training. It was almost all I did. All my college friends, we had to tie together to the weight room somehow. Except for one, but anyway. I
think I know which one.
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
But anyhow, that I almost burnt myself out on it. And so in grad school, I started distance running, and then I did some of my first races, and that was fun. And so then I just kind of developed this very long time quest to try to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and that you were in my life for most of that. And
he did twice, ran it once.
Yeah, but it was a long journey because I felt like I could never get it done, and then I had to figure out how to change my training to do it. And looking back, that entire journey was very informative, and it was kind of cool to, go on this quest to. Well, that's not working, so let's learn from that and let's figure it out, and and it worked. So I did that, but then around about 10 or more years ago, I kind of really got a bit done with the high volume running that
I know,
I've been doing
sounds like
for
over
years.
100 miles a week sometimes.
Just once, but I did a lot of training, as you know, probably. Yeah, I think anyway, it doesn't matter. I worked very hard at it, and I'm very grateful for my experiences doing that. But it was time to not do that. And then one of the things that told me that is I got a little injury in my piriformis muscle, which is a small muscle in your hip. And that was, I think, around Christmas time, 2017, something like that.
I would say somewhere
17
there.
or 18. And all I could do was lift weights and go on the elliptical machine. And I lifted weights. I remember I did like a dumbbell squat, like a goblet squat, which if you don't know what that is, you hold the dumbbell in front of you, kind of like a goblet right under your chin, and you squat from that. So I did I thought pretty easy exercise to do for, and I didn't have a very heavy dumbbell. I think it was like a 25-pound dumbbell. I did like 3 sets of 10 doing that, and I was so sore the next day. It felt like some intense workout from when I was in college. I was just like, and I was
like, what?
Yeah, I realized then, like, to my earlier point, I had been doing a lot of things to be in great aerobic fitness, but my muscular fitness was terrible. I had neglected that for so long.
We're finding the origin of your passion here.
Yeah. And so I couldn't do anything else. So I started lifting weights again and started getting sort of a renewed joy in that. And it was just fun to do something new where I could see improvements. Because when you get older, it's harder and harder to see improvements in things, like if I ever ran again, I'd have to completely pretend I didn't run certain times for certain distances, because it'd just be like, well, geez, I just almost have to come up with new categories.
Giving ourselves grace once again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then just kind of went on this journey doing that. And I really like getting better in the weight room at the moment. And, and to your point earlier, I'm not the biggest, strongest guy around, and I'm not going to be a bodybuilder or anything like that. And I'm not going to be a power lifter or anything like that, because, I don't have any special talent in any of those directions, but it's just fun to be better than myself.
Yeah.
Be a little bit, see, like, wow, I'm progressing in this way, and it's been a good self-care thing, which is a much more positive mental approach to take into my exercising than I used to have. But that's a journey. So, yeah.
Yeah. And another podcast.
So that's my personal history. The other two parts of that question were what?
Yeah. So what kind of exercise advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out in terms of, improving their fitness? And then for those amateur athletes and even pro athletes who have some time on the clock, what can they do to improve their performance and year? Because there's a difference between those of us who are just getting started or back into it versus those who are already going after it.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'd say for the beginner, man, it just so depends on what you want to do, right? But just get started. Let's go with that. Easier steer, moving truck. One of our longtime things that we've said in our family. Shout out to Mark Smith, our former pastor, said that. It's not going to be perfect. Nobody's workout's perfect. You'd be amazed at some people who are known for their fitness. And if you really dissect it, if you got a bunch of exercise science geeks together to dissect their training, they'd find all kinds of things wrong with it. You know, so don't wait for the perfect. Get going. You know, and actually, can I give a shout out that I would say I haven't found. I know resources online can be really confusing because you don't know who's legit and who's not. So I've found that the guys at the Mind Pump podcast,
you really are fans of them.
really have a good balance of they've had a lot of practical experience as personal trainers, and they've developed this ability to read the research and have some basis for their, you know, what they recommend and things like that. So they're a great resource, and they have a lot of free resources, and they have a lot of paid programs, you know, and everything.
And they're not paying us to say that, by the way.
So I'm not trying to slough off that thing, but go to a trusted resource, maybe if you're really concerned about getting started in the right way. But I'm sure your local YMCA's got staff that can help you get started.
Your local
with
fitness centers.
Your local fitness and wellness center. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of really good professionals out there. So if you're already a member of a gym, you've got probably a professional there that'd be more than happy to get you going in the right direction. And if you are more of an advanced athlete, be it recreational or, you know,
professional
or above.
Yeah, or above,
If you reach a sticky point and you don't, from your own experience yourself, know how to handle that and if you're kind of in that confused place, where do I go from here? That's the time for some coaching. Get a proven, trusted coach and work with them.
Yeah, the pros have those. They're like built in. They have access to those all over the place.
And there are coaches for all sorts of things, for all sorts of levels now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So absolutely, you can get someone like that.
Yeah. It's worth the investment.
Yep.
I know when our son played in the professional football league, there was access in the off season to people that you could hire to
absolutely
improve your performance. Yeah. So that certainly is available to people at all levels. Yeah. And then personal trainers at your local fitness centers.
By the way, the two best certifications, people have all sorts of certifications in this field, and I'm not here to drag down any of them, but I am here to say unequivocally that the two best certifications for strength and conditioning coaches, there's a look for the letters after their name, CSCS. That stands for Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, CSCS. And the other is from any certification from the American College of Sports Medicine is also, those people have really done some good study. And those are very high fail rate tests and certifications. So just to tag on, since I spent so much time telling people to go see other people.
Which is good. You know, we want people out there that can help us, and there certainly are a lot of them.
That's right.
And I'm excited for you all to meet some of the other fitness and health experts we will have on in January. Two of them happen to be Chris's colleagues at James Madison University. So that is coming up, and then we'll have to see what else is in store.
Very exciting.
Yes, it is. So before we close out here, how can the Laughers best keep in touch with you on social media or otherwise to get more information or just to connect with you?
Yeah. Well, personally, myself, I have zero social media presence. I have a personal YouTube channel, but it has nothing to do with any of this stuff. And it's a lot of football recruiting videos from 15 years ago and things like that.
Oh, your own personal one.
Yeah,
that's
my own personal one. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on any social media outlet other than that. And so you can't really follow me. The only social media presence I have is with this beautiful lady as part of the Funny Womack. So Funny Womacks are on Instagram. They're on Facebook. And we also have our own website, funnywomacks.com.
That's right. And the YouTube channel you're on right now.
And the YouTube channel that that shows this. So, you can see me to the extent that I have a social media presence on all of that. And if you need to If you have any questions or want to message me or anything, just personal message through that would work.
Yeah, that'll work. And he'll see it. I'll make sure he sees it. So if you have a exercise question or...
That's part of my wellness too, is not doing that. So.
Yeah. So I'll let him know. And if you think he should have his own health and fitness podcast, let him know that too, because he's been thinking about it.
Hey, you never know.
You never know what's going to happen next. Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris, and sharing with us some of your expertise on all things health and fitness. It certainly was a pleasure to have you on the show today and spend time with you, because we met through health and fitness. So
That's
thanks
right.
again for coming
Very
on the
cool.
show.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah. And laughers, thank you for tuning in and spending time with us today. We certainly hope you had a wonderful time. We had a wonderful time with you. So if you enjoyed it, we would love for you to give it a like and share. Tell a friend if they need to get remotivated or motivated, or you want to share in a fitness journey with them. Certainly do that. We would appreciate that, because we're certainly passionate about it.
Yes.
And so that's it for us today. And what else do you have to say?
Nothing much. Good luck. Be process oriented instead of outcome oriented. Become the kind of person that likes being in shape, which is more important than becoming someone who is in shape.
Oh, those are great words to end on. So, and lastly, and most importantly, thanks for tuning in, laughers. Out of all the podcasts out there, you picked us, and we think that's pretty darn special, just like you. Until next time, keep smiling. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by the Funny Womacks and Friends. We'll be dropping a new podcast every Wednesday, so check back for another uplifting episode. Come to a FWAF show or let us bring one to you. To find out more, head to thefunnywomacks.com. Be sure to share this podcast with a friend, and until next time, cheers.